The great crystal hall trembled as thousands of alien voices rose in panic. Ambassador Kira stood at the center of the Galactic Council, her blue skin pale with fear as she held up the ancient stone tablet. The carved symbols on its surface seemed to glow with their own dark light. "The translation is complete," she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The warnings are real. The devourers are coming back." Every being in the hall fell silent. Representatives from 100 different worlds stared at the tablet with growing horror. They all knew the stories their grandparents had told them. Stories of the darkness that came from beyond the stars. Stories of entire civilizations that simply vanished overnight. Commander Taro, a tall warrior with scales instead of skin, stepped forward. His people were known for their bravery in battle, but even he looked afraid. "How long do we have?" Kira looked at the data scrolling across her handheld device. "The deep space sensors have detected the same energy patterns our ancestors. Recorded 6 months, maybe less. They're moving faster than before." Elder Bora, the oldest member of the council, spoke in a voice that shook with age and terror. 3,000 years ago, our people fled to the very edge of the galaxy. We watched from the darkness as they consumed everything we had built. Entire star systems just ... gone, swallowed by ships so large they blocked out the light of suns. "But we survived," said General Hannah, trying to sound hopeful. "Our ancestors found a way to escape. We can do it again." "No," Kira said firmly, "we can't. Back then, there were billions of us scattered across the galaxy. We had massive fleets, weapons that could crack planets, technology beyond anything we have now, and we barely escaped with our lives." She activated the holographic display in the center of the hall. Images appeared in the air, showing the approaching darkness. Strange energy patterns moved through empty space, heading straight for their galaxy like a hungry tide. "The devourers don't just destroy," Kira continued. "They consume. Every ship, every station, every scrap of metal gets absorbed into their collective. They grow stronger with each victory. And now, they're coming back to finish what they started." The hall erupted in frightened voices. Some aliens called for evacuation, others demanded they fight. A few suggested surrender, hoping the devourers might show mercy. "Silence," Elder Bora commanded. The ancient alien's voice carried such authority that everyone stopped talking immediately. "Fighting is useless. Running is pointless. They will hunt us across the universe if they have to. But our ancestors left us something. Hidden knowledge, secret weapons. Things they buried so deep that even they tried to forget about them." "Commander." Taro leaned forward. "What kind of weapons?" "I don't know," Bora admitted. "The records are fragments. Pieces of information scattered across dead worlds. But there are references to something they called the final option. Something they discovered, but chose never to use." "Why wouldn't they use it?" asked Dr. Yuki, a scientist from the core worlds. "If it could have saved them, why keep it secret?" Bora's eyes grew distant as she accessed memories passed down through generations, because they were afraid of it. More afraid of it than they were of the devourers. "The last entry in the archives says they sealed it away in a place where no one would ever find it. They marked it as forbidden, cursed, too dangerous to exist." The holographic display updated, showing new sensor readings. More dark matter signatures were appearing at the galaxy's edge. The devourers weren't just sending scouts anymore. They were beginning their full invasion. "Where?" Kira demanded. "Where did they hide this weapon?" Bora closed her eyes and spoke coordinates that had been hidden for 3,000 years. "Sector 7G, 12 parsecs from the galactic rim. But the location is marked as quarantined in every navigation database. No one goes there. No one even talks about it." "Why not?" Taro asked. "'Cause whatever our ancestors sealed away in that system, they made sure future generations would fear it as much as they did. The warnings are clear. They didn't just hide a weapon there. They imprisoned something. Something they considered more dangerous than the devourers themselves." The hall fell silent again as the full horror of their situation became clear. Their only hope of survival lay in something their ancestors had feared more than extinction itself. More alarms began sounding throughout the station. The tactical displays showed a grim picture. First Devourer scouts had reached the outer colonies. 3 entire worlds had gone dark in the past hour. No distress signals, no final messages, just empty space where thriving civilizations had existed moments before. "We have to try," Kira said finally. "Whatever the risk, we have to find this weapon. It's our only chance."
"Then we go," Taro declared.
"We take our fastest ships and we find whatever our ancestors left behind. Even if it destroys us, it's better than being consumed by those things." As the Council prepared for the most dangerous mission in galactic history, none of them realized they were heading toward a system where a young species had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war, species their own ancestors had. Once encountered and decided was too dangerous to be allowed to spread across the stars, the expedition launched within hours, racing toward an appointment with humanity's answer to the darkness between the stars. 3 months had passed since the first Devourer scouts arrived, and the galaxy was dying.
Oh.
Commander Taro stood in the war room staring at reports that made his blood run cold. Entire star systems were going dark every day, consumed by an enemy. That seemed unstoppable. "Show me the battle recordings again," he ordered. Though he already knew what he would see, the holographic display came alive with images of the latest engagement. 30 of the Council's best warships had engaged a single Devourer scout vessel. The alien ship was massive, its hull looking more like living tissue than metal. When the Council ships fired their most powerful weapons, the energy beams simply disappeared into the enemy's surface like water soaking into sand. "Look at this part," said Dr. Yuki, pointing at the display. "When our missiles hit the hull, watch what happens." Adara watched in horror as the Devourer's ship's surface rippled and flowed around the impact points. The damage healed itself within seconds, leaving no trace that it had ever been hurt. "It's not a machine," Dr. Yuki continued. "It's alive. The entire ship is some kind of organism. That's why our weapons don't work. We're not fighting technology. We're fighting biology." The recording continued, showing the inevitable end. The Devourer's ship extended long tendrils that wrapped around the Council vessels like the arms of a giant octopus. Within minutes, all 30 ships were pulled into the alien craft's hull and simply absorbed. The enemy ship grew slightly larger, then continued on its path toward the inner worlds. 60,000 crew members, Taro whispered, gone without a trace. More reports came in every hour. The evacuation of the outer colonies was complete, but it hardly mattered. The Devourers were moving faster than anyone had predicted. They weren't just consuming military targets anymore. They were taking everything from the largest space stations to the smallest mining outposts. "The archives," announced Ambassador. Kira, as she entered the war room, her usually neat appearance was disheveled from days of searching through ancient records. "We finally found more information about the final option." She activated a new display, showing fragments of text in dozens of different languages. "These are from the last war, scattered across dead worlds throughout the galaxy. Our ancestors left pieces of the puzzle hidden in different places, hoping someone would be smart enough to put them together." "What did you find?" Elder Bora asked, leaning heavily on her walking stick. "References to something they called the Sleeping Terror," Kira replied. "But it's not described as a weapon. The text suggests it was a discovery, something they found, rather than something they built." She pointed to specific passages highlighted in the ancient script. Here they mentioned finding a system that should have been empty but wasn't. They describe encountering something that terrified them more than the Devourers themselves. "What could be worse than the Devourers?" Dr. Yuki asked. "Something that fights back," Bora said quietly. "Something that enjoys it." The display shifted to show star charts with a highlighted system in the galactic rim. The coordinates match what we found before. Sector 7G, but now we know why it's been quarantined for so long. Our ancestors didn't just hide a weapon there. They contained something that scared them so badly, they tried to erase all records of its existence. Taro studied the charts. "What kind of containment are we talking about?" The records mention sealing techniques, barriers that were meant to last forever. But they also mentioned something else. Kira's voice dropped to a whisper. "They say whatever they sealed away was still growing stronger, even locked away. They were afraid it would eventually break free on its own. New alarms interrupted the discussion. Tactical displays updated with fresh intelligence from the front lines. The Devourers had reached the Middle Rim colonies. Entire sectors were going dark faster than the evacuation fleets could move. "We're running out of time," Taro said grimly. "The main force will be here within weeks, whatever our ancestors hid. In that system, we need to find it now." "The expedition fleet is ready," reported Captain Wan, entering the war room. 3 ships, our fastest and most advanced. But I have to ask, are we sure about this? Our ancestors were afraid of whatever? They sealed away. Maybe they had good reasons. "Better to die fighting than be consumed like cattle," Tara replied. "At least this way, we have a chance." Dr. Yuki gathered her research equipment. "I've been studying the Devourer technology we've managed to capture. Their biology is unlike anything in our databases. Whatever species they originally were, they've been changed by their consumption of other civilizations. They're not just conquering the galaxy, they're absorbing it." "Then we find something that can't be absorbed," Kira said with determination, "something that fights back harder than they do." The expedition fleet launched that night, racing toward the quarantine system with the desperate hope of finding salvation in something their ancestors had feared more than extinction. As they entered hyperspace, none of them knew they were heading toward a world where a young species had spent millennia turning warfare into an art form. Behind them, galaxy continued to die as the Devourers advanced, consuming everything in their path. But ahead of them waited something the Galaxy Aiders had never encountered before. Something that would change the meaning of the word dangerous forever. The hunt for humanity was about to begin. The expedition fleet dropped out of hyperspace and immediately knew something was wrong. Captain Wan stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. The system that should have been empty according to every star chart was very much alive. "That's impossible," whispered Science Officer Minsu from his station. "The charts show this system is barren. No planets, no life, nothing but empty space." But the displays told a different story. The third planet from the star blazed with artificial lights visible even from space. Massive structures orbited the world like metal moons, and the space around them crawled with movement. "Those aren't civilian installations," Commander Sujin observed, studying the tactical readouts. "Every single structure is designed for war. Look at the weapon signatures, the armor plating, the positioning. This entire system is one giant fortress." Dr. Yuki worked frantically at her station, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. "The energy readings are off the charts. Our technology is advanced, but it's all wrong. Nothing matches our databases. It's like they developed completely different solutions to the same problems." As they watched, sleek vessels emerged from the planet's atmosphere. The ships were unlike anything in the galactic fleet, built for speed and violence rather than exploration or trade. Their hulls were smooth and predatory, designed by minds that understood killing better than anything else. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer. "Audio only. Unknown language patterns." The voice that came through the speakers was harsh and direct. Dr. Yuki quickly fed the transmission into the translation computer, but the results made everyone on the bridge nervous. "The linguistic structure is highly aggressive," she reported. "Military terminology, threat assessments, dominance patterns. They're asking us to identify ourselves and explain why we're in their territory." "Their territory?" Captain Wan asked. "This system isn't claimed by any species in the galactic records. According to them, it is," Dr. Yuki replied.
Air.
Calling it human space? The word human sent a chill through the bridge crew. Every species in the galaxy had heard the old stories. The warnings passed down through generations about the dangerous beings their ancestors had encountered long ago. More ships appeared around them, surrounding the expedition fleet in a perfect military formation. The human vessels moved with deadly precision, their weapons systems powered up and ready for battle. "Sir," Minsu called out, his voice shaking. "I've been analyzing their technology. These beings have turned their entire star system into a weapon. Every asteroid has been hollowed out and filled with missile launchers. Every moon has been converted into a military base. Even their civilian structures are armed. The translation computer chimed with another message from the humans. This time the tone was more threatening. "They're giving us a final warning," Dr. Yuki translated. "State our business or face the consequences." Captain Wan made a decision that would change everything. "Tell them we need their help. Tell them something is coming that threatens all life in the galaxy." The response came quickly, but it wasn't what they expected. Instead of hostility, there was something else in the human voice. Interest, curiosity, maybe even excitement. "Threats," the translation came through. "What kind of threats?" Over the next hour, the humans listened to the alien's story with growing fascination. They learned about the Devourers, about the civilizations that had been consumed, about the desperate search for the final option their ancestors had hidden away. The human leader, who identified himself as Admiral Dongwu, asked detailed questions about Devourer tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. But his questions weren't those of someone planning to hide or run. They were the questions of someone planning to fight. "So these Devourers," Admiral Dongwu said through the translator, "they think they're unstoppable." "They've consumed 17 galaxies," Captain Wan replied. "They've never been defeated." "Interesting," the human said, and something in his tone made the aliens even more nervous. "We've heard that before." The aliens were invited aboard the human space station, and what they saw there defied all their expectations. The corridors were lined with weapons. The walls displayed tactical information about battles fought against enemies they'd never heard of. Every human they met carried multiple weapons and moved with the fluid grace of born predators. "Your species," Ambassador Kira said carefully. "You seem very focused on warfare." Colonel Haijin, a human female with scars across her face, smiled in a way that made the aliens step back. "We're good at it. We've had lots of practice." Dr. Yuki studied the human technology with growing amazement. "They don't just fight," she whispered to Captain Wan. "They've made war into an art form. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy is designed to win at any cost." "Are you afraid of the Devourers?" Commander Sujin asked Admiral Dongwu. The human leader looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Why would we be afraid? They sound like a challenge." "We like challenges." It was then that the aliens began to understand what their ancestors had really sealed away in this system. Not a weapon, but something far more dangerous. Species that considered impossible odds, not as a reason to surrender, but as a reason to fight harder. The humans weren't just warriors, were beings who had turned violence into a science, who had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of destroying their enemies. And now, for the first time in galactic history, they were being asked to turn that terrible skill against something other than themselves. The galaxy was about to discover. What happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object with a very bad attitude? The human war room buzzed with quiet activity as Admiral Dongwu studied the alien data about the Devourers. Around the table sat his best officers, each one examining the information with the cold efficiency of professional killers. Colonel Haijin traced patterns on the tactical display, while Jinho calculated weapon ranges and firing solutions. "Also, they absorb other ships," Admiral Dongwu said, his voice calm and thoughtful. "They heal damage automatically. They've never been defeated. Is that supposed to scare us?" Captain Wan, the alien expedition leader, nodded nervously. "They've destroyed civilizations far more advanced than anything in our galaxy. Their technology is beyond our understanding."
Doctor?
Suna, the human scientist, looked up from her analysis. "Biological technology, self-repairing systems, hive mind coordination. Actually, it's quite elegant. I can see why your people found them challenging. Ambassador Kira asked in disbelief. "They're unstoppable." "Everything's unstoppable. Until you figure out how to stop it," Colonel Haijin replied with a shrug. "We fought worse odds." The conversation was interrupted by alarms echoing through the station. The tactical displays lit up with new contacts at the edge of the system. The Devourer advance force had arrived, drawn by the alien expedition's signal. "Perfect timing," Commander Jinho said, moving to his station. "All units, battle stations. Let's see what these Galaxy Eaters can do." What followed changed everything the aliens thought they knew about warfare. The humans didn't retreat when they saw the massive Devourer ships. They didn't panic when their first weapons proved ineffective. They simply adapted. Captain Wan watched in amazement as human fighters used the system's asteroid belt as both cover and ammunition. They herded the space rocks into collision courses with enemy vessels, turning simple mining equipment into kinetic weapons that hit with the force of nuclear bombs. "They're using the asteroids as shields," Dr. Yuki observed, studying the tactical displays, but also as weapons. They're fighting with the environment itself. The Devourers tried to absorb the human ships that got too close, extending their biomechanical tendrils to pull the smaller vessels into their hulls. But the humans had prepared for this. Their ships were rigged with explosives that detonated the moment they were grabbed, turning each captured vessel into a bomb that tore through the enemy from within. "They're sacrificing their own ships," Commander Sujin said in horror. "No," Colonel Haijin corrected. "They're using them as weapons. Every ship, every fighter, every piece of equipment is just another tool for killing the enemy. When conventional weapons failed to penetrate the Devourer hulls, the humans improvised. They turned industrial fusion cutters into ship-mounted weapons. They loaded cargo containers with explosive materials and fired them like massive bullets. They even used their own damaged ships as guided missiles, piloting them manually into enemy weak points. But it was the human fighters that truly amazed the aliens. When their ships were destroyed, the pilots continued fighting from escape pods. When their weapons ran out of power, they used compressed air tanks as makeshift rockets. When everything else failed, they rammed their tiny pods into enemy sensor arrays, disrupting the Devourer coordination systems. "They don't know how to quit," Elderbora whispered as she watched the battle unfold. "Even when they're losing, they keep fighting." The turning point came when the humans discovered the Devourer ships. Weakness. Dr. Suna had been studying the enemy's biological systems during the battle, and she found something crucial. "Their healing systems can't handle quantum disruption," she announced over the communication network. "Target the nerve clusters at coordinates the 12th of July 34, hit them with quantum torpedoes." The human ships immediately changed tactics, focusing their fire on specific points along the Devourer hulls. The alien ships, which had been healing from every attack, suddenly began to falter. Their self-repair systems couldn't cope with weapons that disrupted matter at the quantum level. "How did they figure that out so quickly?" Captain Wan asked in amazement. "They adapt," Admiral Dongwu replied simply. "Every enemy teaches us something new. These Devourers just taught us how to kill them." Battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Devourer advance force had been completely destroyed, but the humans weren't celebrating. They were already working on the wreckage, studying the alien technology with the same intensity they had shown in destroying it. "Main force arrives in 3 weeks, Dr. Sana reported, her hands covered in strange biomechanical components. "But now we know how their systems work. We can prepare proper countermeasures." "Countermeasures?" Ambassador Kira asked. "There are millions of them coming. How can you possibly prepare for that?" Admiral Dongwu smiled, and for the first time, the expression didn't look threatening. It looked genuinely pleased. "You came looking for a weapon to save your galaxy. What you found was something better. You found a species that treats impossible odds as a personal challenge." He turned to address the alien representatives directly. "Your ancestors were smart to be afraid of us, but they made one mistake. They thought we were dangerous because we liked to fight. The truth is, we're dangerous because we're very good at it." The aliens looked around the human war room, seeing the tactical displays, the weapon schematics, the battle plans already forming for the next engagement. They finally understood what their ancestors had really sealed away in this system. Not just warriors, but a species that had turned war itself into a science. And now, for the first time in galactic history, that science was being used to protect rather than conquer. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity decided something was worth fighting for. The final battle began at the edge of the galaxy, where darkness met light. The Devourer main force emerged from the void like a plague of living stars, their massive ships pulsing with organic light as they prepared to consume another galaxy. They had done this 17 times before. One more would be easy. But as they approached the galactic rim, They found something that had never existed in their previous conquests. The entire galaxy was waiting for them, united under a single banner of war. Admiral Dongwu stood on the bridge of the flagship, surrounded by alien officers who had learned to think like humans. Captain Wan wore human battle armor now, his peaceful diplomatic training replaced by months of tactical education. Ambassador Kira coordinated supply lines with the efficiency of a veteran quartermaster. Even Dr. Yuki had traded her scientific equipment for weapons analysis computers. All sectors report ready, Colonel Hyjin announced. The Veltari have converted their crystal gardens into focusing arrays. The Theses have weaponized their historical archives. Every species in the galaxy has found a way to contribute to the war effort. The transformation was remarkable. The peaceful trading civilizations had become weapons manufacturers. The scholarly species had turned their research stations into military laboratories. Even the most pacifist races had found ways to support the defense, converting their meditation centers into shield generators and their art galleries into ammunition depots. The humans are contagious, Elder Bora observed, watching the tactical displays. They've infected our entire galaxy with their refusal to give up. The Devourers attacked with the confidence of apex predators. Their ships, some the size of small moons, moved forward in perfect biological formation. They had consumed civilizations across 17 galaxies. This would be no different. They were wrong. The first wave of Devourer ships hit the outer defense perimeter and found themselves facing something their victims had never possessed. It's a unified military doctrine that treated the entire galaxy as a single weapon. Human-trained alien crews used tactics that defied every logical military principle. Sector 7, initiate gravity mines, Commander Jinho ordered from the tactical center. Sector 12, begin electromagnetic bombardment. Remember, make them chase you into the kill zones. The aliens had learned human lessons well. Direct confrontation failed, they used misdirection. When their weapons proved ineffective, they improvised. When their ships were outmatched, they turned them into guided missiles. The Veltari, who had spent centuries perfecting crystal technology for meditation, now used their skills to create planet-sized laser arrays. The Vises, masters of historical preservation, had weaponized ancient technologies their ancestors had abandoned as too dangerous. The Corvin, natural miners, had turned entire asteroid fields into kinetic weapon platforms. Dr. Senna coordinated the scientific response from her mobile laboratory. The regeneration systems are overloading. Quantum disruption weapons are working, but we need to hit more nerve clusters simultaneously. The battle raged for days. The Devourers, for the first time in their existence, found themselves not just facing resistance, but being pushed back. Every tactic they employed was countered by defenders who had learned to think like their human teachers. But the real turning point came when the humans revealed their masterstroke. They had been studying the Devourer hive mind communication network, and Dr. Sana had found something remarkable. Their collective consciousness operates on quantum entanglement, she explained to the command staff. But quantum systems are vulnerable to specific types of interference. We can introduce a virus into their network. A biological virus? Captain Wan asked. No, Dr. Sana replied with a smile that would have made her human teachers proud. Something much more dangerous. An idea. The virus they introduced was simple but devastating. It was the concept of doubt, the possibility of failure, the fear of defeat. The Devourers, who had operated as a perfect collective for millions of years, suddenly found themselves questioning their own invincibility. As the idea spread through their quantum network, the impossible happened. The Devourer fleet began to hesitate. Ships that had moved in perfect coordination started making mistakes. The hive mind that had conquered 17 galaxies began to fracture as individual units experienced something they had never known before: uncertainty. They're withdrawing, Commander Sujin reported in disbelief. All ships pulling back to the galactic edge. Admiral Dongwu opened a communication channel to the retreating fleet. His message was broadcast in every language known to the galaxy, ensuring that every species would remember this moment. Tell others what you found here, he said simply. Tell them that somewhere in the universe, There exists a species that gets stronger when cornered. Tell them that humanity answered the call. The Devourers fled into the darkness between galaxies, carrying with them the knowledge that they were no longer unstoppable. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something that fought back harder than they could consume, as the galaxy celebrated its survival. The transformation was complete. The peaceful civilizations had become something new, something that combined their natural strengths with human determination. They were no longer just traders, scholars, and artists. They were survivors who had learned the most important human lesson of all, that victory belonged to those who belonged to those who refused to accept defeat. But for the humans themselves, the victory was just the beginning. They had tasted what it meant to fight for something beyond themselves, to use their skills to protect rather than conquer. They had found their true purpose in the universe. The galaxy was safe, but the universe was vast. Somewhere in the darkness, other threats were stirring. Threats that would soon learn what it meant to face humanity's answer to the impossible. The age of human expansion had begun.